Hi, everyone. It's Bob Perkins bringing you another interview in the Inside Sales Studio series. I'm here today with a special guest, David Leinweber. David, how are you?
Hi, Bob. Doing well. How are you doing today?
Yeah, it's good to see you. In fact, we saw each other in Boston where you were coming in to present, and also as one of our partners and sponsors. We really appreciate LevelEleven, so thank you.
Well, thank you, Bob. I mean, we've been a part of the ASP for a while now, and every event we go to see the industry growing and seeing people kind of broaden their understanding of what inside sales means to this community.
Well, we appreciate that, appreciate the support. Now, let's get into today's topic. This is going to be more of a little bit longer of a presentation, maybe 10 minutes or so. And David, you're going to talk about something that we haven't figured out quite the best way to do it, or if we figured out how to do it, it doesn't get done, and that has to do with effective coaching. You're going to share a methodology. I know you have some PowerPoint slides. That's fantastic, and we'll let you get started. We're really looking forward to learning more about coaching best practices and what you've learned over the years as a sales leader.
For sure. Well, thanks, Bob. I mean, this is a topic I'm really passionate about at LevelEleven, and we talk about this with our customers all the time. It was a hot topic at the Boston event, as Bob mentioned earlier. And really, what we're going to be talking about today is why coaching is important. What are the different types of coaching that we see customers doing and companies doing, and what are ways that managers and leaders can find more time and build that culture of coaching that everyone's trying to drive. So with that, I'll share my screen and we can dive right in.
Right.
So when we talk about sales coaching as a methodology, it's obviously all about the people. And what we kept hearing at ASP a few weeks ago was everyone's looking for ways to make their people better, onboard them better. How do we motivate, engage, and coach around the right behaviors that drive results? So with that, we wanted to talk about a few things here today. One, what are the elements of a good coaching session? Two, what are the different types of coaching? And clearly one size does not fit all. Are you have a field sales team, an inside sales team? Are you talking about SDRs, AEs? And also just how often do you need to be doing these different types of coaching? It can feel overwhelming at times, but hopefully this will help provide kind of a summary level that you can dive into more at your leisure. We're going to talk about some important coaching topics to bring up, as well as why it's so important to have data-driven coaching. Mm-hmm. And then, Bob, we can open up for discussion, and we have some additional resources for the people on the call.
Great.
So first, what are the elements of a good coaching session? First of all, it's important to note that there's a ton of research out there that talks about how sales coaching drives better results. Whether you're looking at the Harvard Business Review, CSO Insight, Sales Management Association, the things we keep seeing and hearing is that the companies that coach and make the time for coaching have better results, reps hitting quota more often. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend an exorbitant amount of time, but making sure you're carving out time and making sure that it's focused time on rep improvement and not just forecast and deal reviews.
Right.
So really important. A lot of research around that. And also just there's not enough time being spent on coaching. And I think, Bob, you even called this out at the keynote at the Boston event, the percentage of time that managers think they're coaching versus the amount of time that reps feel that they're receiving coaching, two very different numbers.
Two different numbers. What also came out in that same research was managers rate themselves better as effective coaches, much better, like 70, 80%, compared to about 50% that the reps rate them at.
Right. And that goes back to when a manager thinks that their coach is sometimes it's just a deal interrogation, or they're just firing questions at a person. They don't feel like they're getting better.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this. And this is an exercise we actually did at the event a few weeks ago, is a role play of how to coach better. I won't do the full role play today, but you'll see a little bit of what we're talking about here. A typical coaching session is often unstructured. The questions aren't really pulling from any context or data, and it's just kind of yes or no answers. What's working well? Where do you need help? How are you going to hit your quota? What can I help you with? It's not a whole lot about how do we make the rep better day in and day out. That's a typical coaching session, so not a lot of preparation. The manager didn't have time, the rep didn't have time. Eventually, they just stopped doing it because it feels like a chore and people aren't getting much out of it.
Right.
versus in that same 30 minutes to an hour, or however often you're doing, providing specific feedback. Congratulations on improving your connect rate. It looks like you're having a lot more live conversations, but your meetings booked as a result are not trending in the right direction. So why don't we dive into why that is? Are you not able to close for the meeting? And if so, here's some resources that we think would help you get better at that specific skill. Or even better, someone else on the team is fantastic at closing the meeting. So why don't you talk to James and have that conversation on how you can convert conversations into more meetings? So what could have maybe taken the entire conversation on the left, you can cover that in just a few minutes if you have the right data, context, and you're prepared for the meeting on both the rep and manager side. And then the last piece is, then you're able to free up time to work on things that really never get enough attention. In this case, we made an example of working on email templates to work on their cadence outreach. So then taking a step back, so obviously the few things that we got feedback on when we did this role play at the AISP was what went well in that situation of the left side of here versus the right side of here was one, the managers in the audience really said, well, obviously you were more prepared in the second scenario. You're able to provide more personalized feedback. And as a result, the person trusted that you cared about them and was more receptive to that feedback. So then when we start talking about the different types of coaching conversations, again, one size does not fit all. And we've identified at least 6 different types out there. There's probably more, but feel free to send us a note if you've uncovered a new type of coaching that we haven't seen yet. But ones that we see pretty often, at least with our customers and with companies out there is, are we setting expectations and tracking goal attainment? Are we providing peer coaching or best practice reviews? How are we coaching around better interactions? Those might be things through call coaching or listening in on calls. Having deal and pipeline management coaching conversations are certainly another part of it. But then you also have things like presentation, demo skills, and territory planning management.
This is great. What I see you've done here, when we as inside sales leaders used to think of coaching, our mind went right to the ride along or listening to a call recording and, hey, that was a good opening, maybe try this on the close, that kind of thing. But what you've done is you've encompassed all aspects. Is, you know what, David, it's like my golf lessons I get. I just don't work on my driver swing. I work on stretching, exercises, warming up, how to hit out of a sand bunker. That's what you've done here.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate that. And like you said, the ride along is super important. The call coaching is super important, but we don't want to neglect the other things. Yeah. And also, how can you kind of tie that all together into an overall coaching methodology? And again, when we say one size does not fit all, some people, these will apply to all. Some might apply more to outbound sales. Some might apply more to account executives or account managers. Some might be purely SDR focused. And things like territory planning, if you have a territory, that's obviously a key decider if you're really going to do any kind of territory planning and management there. Yep. And not all these need to be done every week or every month even. Some of them might be as infrequent as quarterly. So finding the right mix for your organization is something to think about. And also thinking of who gets involved in that. Is that a one-on-one meeting or is that, a periodic manager review between rep and manager?
Right.
Yep. So happy to share these slides afterwards, but that's kind of a high-level overview.
Yeah.
And the other, thing that we constantly hear from customers and other people involved in the AISP is how do we bring this all together? How do we make time? How do we focus on the key behaviors that will actually drive results? So starting off with, where do we find the time? Every sales manager, director of sales, VP of sales I know are some of the busiest people in the world. And frontline sales management, I agree with wholeheartedly, is one of the hardest jobs out there. You sometimes have 5, 10, 15. We met a woman at the AISP who had 26 direct reports. So how do you make the time for all those people? Obviously, that's not an ideal scenario, but how do you find the time to provide personalized feedback and coaching? Number one that we usually talk about is find ways to foster self-sufficiency. Not that you have to delegate everything to them, but if you're able to get them to complete a portion of a coaching note prior to getting into that conversation, then it's not all on you and you can see what they want to talk about. If you're able to actually create a structured meeting with a common agenda for each time, that can help you just so you're not jumping in cold each and every time. or you have to think, oh, what did we talk about 2 weeks ago? What were the action items? If you have that all in front of you when you get into that conversation, you have some people do that through Google Docs with a running sheet. Some people use things like LevelEleven to create that structure. But as long as you're using something that will hold you and the rep accountable and give you, I guess, context to the conversations you've had previously, number 2 is definitely important. And then we look at guidelines and blocking time and leveraging technology. These are all just best practices for any manager. But certainly, blocking the time for coaching, you might have to move it within the day, but don't cancel things entirely. And number 5 is, leveraging things like Zoom. We're not in the same place right now, Bob, but for a coaching conversation, you could let me know where I'm screwing up with this interview and we could go from there.
Right. These are really, really good tips. The self-sufficiency brings me back to about 20 years ago. We had something called a tape club. We actually used cassette tape recorders to tape outbound calls, and the reps would get together over lunch and they would listen to each other's tapes and kind of comment, and no managers were there. So a lot of good, listen, these are really good tips. And it reminds me that if you break it up into certain segments and types of coaching, it's not as overwhelming. I think today we're like, oh my gosh, I got to do my one-on-one, I got to do my coaching, instead of really structuring it out like this. And it's getting back to some of these fundamentals that sometimes we get away from. So David, a couple of things. In a minute, I know you're going to talk about an ebook you have, but before you go there, you really didn't talk at all about LevelEleven. I mentioned that you're the CEO there, but I know you're a performance management suite for sales and customer service. But tell us a little bit more about the service and the solution itself, if you will.
Sure. So LevelEleven, we're a performance management suite for sales and customer-facing teams. We sit natively inside of your Salesforce CRM, and we help you motivate, engage, and coach around the behaviors that lead to better outcomes. We do that in a variety of ways. When we talk about motivate, that's things like gamification, leaderboards, broadcasting things to TVs. Inside sales teams usually love that because it helps provide real-time feedback on their performance when they close a deal or hit their goal. When you talk about engage, it's real-time scorecards for individual contributors and their managers. Just was on a conversation with a gentleman earlier today, and he was saying, he's custom built his own scorecards, but as they're adding more and more reps, it's impossible to keep up with, and he's not a Salesforce admin. So finding a way to automate that, make it real time, and give him insights so that he knows where to coach his team and course correct is really important. And then the last piece is around coaching. How do we create structured workflows, data-driven coaching? How do we provide context so it's not just what's going well, where do you need help, and how do we actually document the feedback so that the reps can get better and improve, and also foster the self-sufficiency like you're talking about.
I love those 3 areas as they have to do with the individual. It's not a metric. It's not go make 50 calls, you'll be successful, but it's motivating and it's helping improve and develop people. That's what LevelEleven is all about. So if you have any questions about that, please get in touch with David or someone on his team. And then David, you mentioned an ebook on coaching that can be downloaded from your website.
Yep, that's correct. I'm going to leave this up there just so that people can look at the takeaways from this conversation. But all of these 7 best practices around coaching are available on LevelEleven.com, and it's called 7 Coaching Best Practices. So go to LevelEleven.com, go to our resources section, 7 Coaching Best Practices. You can find that in the search bar. And happy to share the link with this with you, Bob, afterwards, so you could send it out to the community, and hopefully they find as valuable as we do.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll make sure it's produced here in the video. And then best way, if anyone wants to contact you directly that might have a question about today or a question about your company, LevelEleven.
Sure. If you want to certainly have any questions of me personally, send me an email at david.leinweber, LeinWeber, I know that's a mouthful, at LevelEleven.com. Or you can certainly go to our website and request more information about either requesting a demo or looking at the resources we have under the resource tab.
Well, that's great. We'll make sure we share that here on the video with the viewers. Everyone, thanks so much for watching this really good video here on coaching. Hopefully some of these points resonated. We look forward to seeing everybody out at the chapter meeting, at a future AA-ISP event. And David, you and the LevelEleven team, we look forward to seeing you again as well. Thank you very much for sharing today.
Thanks, Bob. It was a pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.